Alright, I'm back. I got the tire mounted and mounted the brake rotor. I weighed every part, made a little list. I used a calibrated scale, and I went out and balanced it. It was dead on. I put the light spot on the tire with the valve stem, and it seems to be dead on. So we're good to go. One thing I did notice that I was a little bit unsure about is the way that the push drive fits together with the sprocket. I was a little bit unsure about. Basically, it came with this little gasket here, which I thought was interesting, this little flimsy gasket thing. And it wasn't mentioned in the parts diagram what that was, but this is where it was positioned. And as you can see, once you insert it, it's resting on the center hub, on the actual like once you tighten this down, the entire force of this entire sprocket, any torque that it experiences, will go directly into the axle because it has so much play. And now these guys are engineers and I'm not, so they probably understand what they're doing. But I'm just curious if anyone else has BST rims, if they've noticed that the hub doesn't really, the push drive doesn't fit into the hub very nice. I mean, there's no play in terms of rotation, but there's tons of play in terms of torque. If this thing experiences any torque, which it generally shouldn't experience a lot of torque, but still. And the axle is steel. The axle is plenty strong. I don't know, I'm just not used to that. My Honda fits together a little tighter than that, a lot tighter than that. And it also just seems like it should, it should sit pretty flush right there. But maybe they left that movement there on purpose. I just don't know for sure. But either way, I'm not super worried about it, but I am curious about it. And I'm also curious about this little gasket thing that they put in there. But then they didn't mention the instructions, and they didn't mention it in the parts diagram. Also, because of the design here, you can see you have your push drive inside the hub, which is great. It fits in nice, and the sprocket carrier fits in really nice right in there, with the ends of these Allen heads fit right in there, nice and snug. But I'm unable to use my titanium studs that I have with the Honda setup. So I would have to, if I wanted to go titanium with these, I'd have to go track down another set. I was able to put the aluminum nuts on there. I tightened them down to, I think it was, I went in whatever the directions said for that size. I think it was like 20 Newton meters or something like that. But I followed the directions on that. Used a bow torque wrench to make sure. I took out every single spacer. I weighed it. They're all super lightweight aluminum. They're all like zero gap. Like, these things are they're so such a perfect fit that you can barely even get them together. And once you do get them together, they're nice. So that's really nice machining there. This is a Renthal sprocket. It's 44 tooth. It's 520. It's one of the lightest I could find that fits the BST Oz hub size. So I actually bought a couple different ones trying to find the lightest. I probably could have gone with a 43 tooth and saved a couple, an ounce or two, but I just happened to get a deal on that one. Here's the old Honda rim, it's off the 1000RR. It's actually one of the lightest rims you can get, the 2008 to 2011 Honda 1000RR. It's a 6-inch, but it's one of the lightest you can get in that size. So it's nice that they did that for the bike. This should save about 4 pounds. And the tire I have on here is a 180/55 Dunlop Q3 Plus. It's already got some miles on it. I just switched it over from the other rim. I mounted this tire by hand with levers. I know the instructions say not to do that. Specifically, they said don't use a tire lever to mount these things. But I've done it before, and I really took my time. I used RUglyde, which they mention in the instructions that if you're going to mount a tire, you should use RUglyde, which is kind of like a slippery green liquid that helps you mount tires. And I put 32 pounds of pressure in it, and as a little trivia fact, I weighed the tire before and after putting the air pressure in. It was 55 grams. So when I was weighing all my parts and adding it all up in the spreadsheet, it was never coming up right until I realized that the air itself weighs 55 grams. It was throwing off my measurements. On my front tire, it was something like 40 grams, I think. And I've got ultra light rear rotor, which I showed you guys on the other video. Titanium bolts going in there. And I think I got those off of AliExpress. And they actually came out nice out of my other rim. I was a little worried about it, that they might gall. And in my other rim, it's screwed into aluminum alloy. And in this, I believe it's screwed into, this is also aluminum alloy. And I didn't see any thread inserts there. So now you've got titanium and aluminum in close proximity. So I'm going to have to keep a close eye on that and make sure it behaves. But so far, so good. I haven't got the final tally on the weight yet. I can't wait to put it in my spreadsheet and find out. I already, estimated it to be about 4 pounds. So 4 pounds of rotational weight is, and plus there's probably an improvement in the moment of inertia in addition to that. Plus this is an ultra light tire. This is, the Q3 Plus is, I think I want to say it's like 13.2 pounds, and it actually weighed like 13.1 when it was brand new. So it's one of the lightest tires you could put, but it's a 180, so you're talking, normally that'd go on a 5.5-inch rim. I have it on a 6-inch rim. You can see the profile is fine. That's the profile that I'm riding on. You actually do lose a little bit out here. You're going to lose, I actually end up on the edge of this tire where on a 190/55 I probably would not. So if you're riding on the track, that's a no-go. You're better off with the 190/55. The only downside is the 190 is heavier. So not a big deal, but for me it is because on the type of experiments that I'm doing, I want it light. So I went with the 180, and it sticks like glue on the roads, even if it's 45, 50 degrees out. Even if you didn't warm it up, you can stuff these tires into turns, which I don't recommend doing that, of course. You probably should warm it up a little bit, but it's really impressive how nice these things grip, especially compared to the tires I spent most of my life riding on, which is the Pirelli Diablos, which slide around all the time pretty much, unless you really warm them up. So it was a nice change to get into something like this that actually grips. They're relatively, fairly priced relative to the Pirelli Super Corsa V2, for example. In the front, I'm going to do a 120/60 Q3 Plus. Again, that's an unusual tire size. Most people would run a 120/70. If you're on the track, obviously, you're probably better off with a 120/70, but for the type of things I'm doing, I'm going to try the 120/60. It's only 8.2 pounds. It just came out like a couple months ago. So I'm going to have to take my Q3 Plus off the front and swap it with a 120/60, which of course is it's also on a BST rim. So I'm going to have to, it'll be the first time I take a tire off of a BST rim, and I'll have to, put the new one on. So there'll be lots of practice with levers on carbon rims. Now these things are thicker than the actual like lip of this aluminum forged rim is thinner than the lip of this carbon rim. So theoretically, this is actually a lot stronger. It's just that if you did very slightly dent this, you would never know it. If you damage this and cause a crack, it's pretty much done. The rim is pretty much done. So that's the reason why. Although they may be stronger, the risk is higher. And if you just happen to put your lever in a spot where there's a slight imperfection, who knows, you might cause a crack. But I take tiny little bites with it. I have a lot of experience mounting tires with levers and stuff, so I really take my time, use a lot of tire lube, and do every trick in the book. Make sure that the beads are in the center of the channel in the back. While you're working up here, you got to make sure that the tire down here is in the center of this, so it's giving you as much like relief up here as possible, so you don't have to lever so hard on it. And then once you get to that last little section here, you can lever it right in.